There's no arguing that right now Harrison Barnes is the third best player on this Sacramento Kings team, but his recent disappearance act on offense has fans rightfully questioning whether or not he can fulfill that role long term. On today's Locked On Kings podcast, we'll talk about the recent struggles for Harrison Barnes offensively, truly what's expected of him, and whether or not he should be that guy for this team next season. It's all on today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season and all off-season. If you're looking for in-depth analysis, game-by-game breakdowns, highlights, interviews with local and national experts, full coverage of your Sacramento Kings from January through December, this is the place for you, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I've been a Sacramento sports media member for the last 7 years, my 8th season covering Kings basketball, now with ABC 10 News here in the California capital. And I'm a big fan of Harrison Barnes. I've always been a big fan of Harrison Barnes. And whenever I have a conversation about Harrison Barnes' future with the Kings, because it's no surprise that every single year, especially recently, Barnes' name is brought up in trade conversations. There's a reason why that happens. It's because he's a valuable player that a lot of teams would like to have. But what's interesting is a lot of teams that are trying to acquire Harrison Barnes are looking for him to be more than likely a fourth scoring option and just a consistent presence at a 3 or 4 spot, depending upon where you want to play him. He is a valuable wing in the NBA, and that wing position has been historically very difficult for the Sacramento Kings to fill. So that alone makes Harrison Barnes extra valuable to me. However, if Harrison Barnes is your third scoring option specifically, if Harrison Barnes is your third best player, are you a good basketball team? Is he capable of consistently filling that role? That question has come up a lot recently with the, quite honestly, disappearing act of Harrison Barnes. In his last 3 games, Barnes has scored a total of 16 points. He had 0 points in Sacramento's blowout loss on Friday to the Boston Celtics at home. 0 points in 24 minutes. 10 points taking just 5 shots against the Milwaukee Bucks. He also only took 5 shots against the Boston Celtics, 6 points on just 8 shots in the win against the Chicago Bulls. 3 straight games where the Kings as a team had some strong moments, especially in the Bucks game and the Bulls game. The Celtics game is a bit of an outlier, and I'm actually not going to talk too much about that game specifically because, one, De'Aaron Fox didn't play, which immediately killed the Kings' chances or basically gave the Kings little to no chance of winning this game. Domatas Sabonis did play really well, and I'm going to talk about him and how he provided exactly what I needed from Sabonis with Fox out in this game. I'll talk about that after we're done talking about Barnes. But overall, if you are the third best player on a team, you have to be scoring more than 16 points over 3 games. Now, recency bias is a big thing because if you look at the 5 games before that, 4 out of the 5 games, he scored 17 or more points. 27 points against San Antonio, only 9 points against Dallas on 8 shots, 23 points against the Knicks, 17 points against Denver, 18 points against Utah. That is right around the range that I need Harrison Barnes to be. He even had 19 points against New Orleans. So with the exception of these 3 games and that 9-point game against the Dallas Mavericks, for the most part, he's had a really solid month of March. And right around that 15, 16 points per game is exactly where I need Harrison Barnes. But I also need Barnes, if he's going to be my third option, I need Barnes shooting way more than the 5, 8, 9 field goal attempts that I'm seeing here. Even in games where he had good scoring nights, only 9 field goal attempts, scoring 27 points. Now, a lot of that was because he got to the line 14 times. Love to see that. That means he was aggressive. You need that from HB. But also, if you're running an offense that is featuring a pick and roll combo of De'Aaron Fox and Domatas Sabonis, neither of which is known for their 3-point shot, you need to space the floor. I need my third best scorer to shoot the 3. And Harrison is arguably the best 3-point shooter on this Kings team right now. I mean, if you look at his season 3-point shooting percentage, he's at 41.2%. Best on the team. by far. You need Harrison Barnes to space that floor and become enough of a shooting threat. We know what Barnes can do putting the ball on the floor. We know what Barnes can do around the basket. He's one of those slow motion, effortless finishers around the rim, especially through contact, and always seems like it's going in. And when Barnes gets a mismatch and gets into the post, more often than not, Barnes is scoring. That's where he's reliable, but he needs that aggressiveness consistently. He can't have it one or two nights scoring 20 plus points and then disappear for 5 or 6 or 0 the very next night if this team wants to be any kind of a consistent offensive threat and a winning basketball team. As good as Fox and Sabonis are as scorers, with no Buddy Hield, with no Tyrese Halliburton, Barnes, that falls extremely heavy on your shoulders. And overall, what I need from Barnes is if I can get 15 points a night out of Harrison Barnes, I'm happy. I don't expect him to be an 18 to 20 point scorer like he showed flashes of and stretches of in his time here in Sacramento, especially at the beginning of the season, right? When he was scoring like 23 points per game, shooting over 50% from the field. I love that from Harrison. I'm glad Harrison can provide those games for you, but that's not realistic to expect from him. But is 15 points per game and more than 12 field goal attempts and more than 5 3-point attempts per game. Is that a realistic expectation for Harrison Barnes? Yes. Is that a good enough range, average, for your third best player? Now that's a tough question because a lot of that also depends on the rest of the supporting cast. That puts a lot of pressure on guys like Dante DiVincenzo, guys like Davion Mitchell, and whoever else the Kings are going to add to this group next season, assuming Barnes is still around next season. It puts a lot of pressure on them and whatever rookies you draft or whoever you get in free agency to also provide a decent amount of scoring. Because on a night where you're without Fox, like against Boston, or you're without Sabonis, or even if the two of them play, on some nights, one of them is going to have a bad game. Hell, on some, there are going to be some nights where both of them have a bad game. Right now, if that's the case with Harrison Barnes as your third option, you're losing that game. You have little chance of winning. The disappearance act from Harrison Barnes has been concerning for sure as of late. Absolutely concerning. Especially when a lot of these games have been without one of the two big guys. He did not play very well with Domatas Sabonis out of the lineup. And just last night, he was horrific offensively with De'Aaron Fox not in the lineup. And we know Harrison Barnes is capable of being aggressive. But what I'm concerned about is it seems like when Barnes is aggressive, that's when maybe Fox isn't as active. Like, is there a way, a camaraderie that can be achieved between Fox, Sabonis, and Barnes as your hypothetical big three in Sacramento, where all three of them can eat at the same time? All three of them can get their touches. All three of them can score more than 15 points a game together. I don't think that should be too challenging, but that should be the bare minimum expectation for those three next season, or you're in trouble as a basketball team. Because the reality is, unless Monte McNair strikes gold with a defensive overhaul this offseason, the Kings defensively next season are not going to be suddenly incredibly better. They're going to be hopefully average. And if they're average, then it's going to be their offense that is going to need to put them over the top in addition to their average defense to get them in the playoff picture. You can't be a good offensive team when your third best option half the time disappears and isn't looking for his shot. I need Barnes to space the floor more. I need him to be more aggressive. And what I know I'm going to get from Harrison Barnes is a good shot selection. What I appreciate from Harrison is that he doesn't just chuck up bad shots, but he doesn't have to chuck up bad shots to get 12 plus field goal attempts per game. He's smart enough to pick his spots and know when to shoot. And I've seen far too many instances where the ball has been kicked out to Barnes and he has enough space to shoot and he puts the ball on the floor and attacks or looks to pass. No, HB, you're the third option. That's your shot. You got to knock that down. Because if not, defenses aren't going to respect you. They're going to continue to crowd the paint against Sabonis and Fox, and the Kings offensively are going to be in a whole lot of trouble. How are you feeling about Harrison Barnes? Recency bias says he's not playing so well. But again, earlier this month, he had a good stretch and he was scoring well. Do you trust Harrison Barnes as the third option for the Sacramento Kings? Yes or no? And if not, are you looking to add a better third option while keeping HB? Because that's really tough. Now, you could also use HB and probably your draft pick to go out and find a better scoring option, but it's going to need to be a wing. You can't trade away HB and bring in a shooting guard because you'll be super depleted as a wing. Even if that shooting guard is a better scorer, you'll have no wing depth, which we've seen this team deal with far too often. So it goes back to the conversation that we had before the trade deadline. If you're trading away Harrison Barnes, you're not just moving him for equal value. You're trying to get something better to replace him with. You're going to have to use your draft pick to get that done, more likely than not, unless you somehow get lucky in free agency, which is not a good gamble for the Sacramento Kings organization based off of history. And that seems like a wishful thinking to begin with, trading Harrison Barnes and a draft pick for something significant enough to give up that much of a haul, because HB is still, even when he's not scoring, an incredibly important piece of this team. The perfect scenario to me is HB is your fourth option and you find a way to get a third scoring option in here, one who spaces the floor and provides you depth either as a shooting guard or a wing who's a 3-and-D type player, spaces the floor, knocks down shots, has a pulse defensively. Like, that's the best case scenario, but that's also very difficult because 30 NBA teams are looking for that guy. Always looking for that guy. They're hard to come by. Do you trust Harrison Barnes as your third option? And if so, what are realistic expectations scoring-wise and shooting-wise for HB? I'm talking about points per game. I don't really care about assists and rebounds. I'm talking about points and field goal attempts per game, both total and 3-point field goal attempts. What is realistic for him to be a third option for the Kings going forward on a playoff team in your mind? Let me know. I'm Matt George Sack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Got to talk about the game Domatas Sabonis had. He gave me, honestly, everything that I wanted with De'Aaron Fox out. Might have resulted in a blowout loss still. Some might call it empty stats. I saw what I needed to see. I'll explain. Plus, the Kings are without Richaun Holmes for the remainder of the season. And there's a very good chance that Richaun Holmes has played his last game as a Sacramento King. Talk about that still after I tell you about Bet Online. I hope you took the under, or rather the over in points in this game, and I hope you took Boston minus whatever the hell they had in this game, because boy, did they cover that spread and then some. Whether you're betting on sports, you're looking for Vegas casino games, you're looking just to make some money on the side with that sports knowledge, make sure you're using Bet Online. Right now, college basketball's tournament finally upon us, of course, all the NBA action too, and with the latest odds, contests, and player props, betonline.net is the #1 source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and your news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information needs, including live betting and, like I said, your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website or use your mobile device. Learn more about the trends in the action at BetOnline, where the game starts. What is there to say about a near 30-point loss at home to the Boston Celtics, especially after the first two games of this home stand, I should say, have been very good games. The win over the Chicago Bulls and a very, very hard-fought battle against the Milwaukee Bucks. This game is the outlier to me. This game is the one that gets an asterisk next to it, because this is not, that kind of result is not a proper indication of what this Kings team is now. Maybe a month and a half ago, before the trade deadline, that kind of result was far too common for that team at that time. That's who they were. Not this game, especially with De'Aaron Fox not playing. Now, Fox was out. He suffered a hand injury that he fought through against the Milwaukee Bucks. Kings decided to err on the side of caution with their franchise player, did not have him play against the Celtics. I understand and appreciate that move. And the Kings got their asses kicked. Now, the only thing that would have made this game worse is if the Kings got their asses kicked and Domatas Sabonis also got his ass kicked. Because without Fox, the Kings needed guys to step up. Sabonis is elevated to the best player on the team if he's not already. He needs to play like it. And to Sabonis' credit, he stepped up in a major way. Domatas Sabonis had a fantastic game. 30 points, 20 rebounds. I think this is the first Sacramento Kings since Chris Webber to do that. I mean, that's just an incredible stat line. 6 of those rebounds were offensive rebounds. I mean, Domatas Sabonis was very aggressive. He was looking for a shot, took 20 attempts. Love to see that, especially with Fox out. Hit 12 of them, got to the line 7 times, hit 5 of them. Also had 5 assists, a steal, a block shot. Like, I saw everything that I needed to see out of Domatas Sabonis in this game because I want my star player or one of my stars to step up when the other is out. Now, he, of course, needs help. And when you're getting 0 points from Harrison Barnes and you're getting 0 points, or rather only 3 points in 30 minutes from Dante DiVincenzo, you're in big trouble. Davion Mitchell provided 12 points as a starter. Justin Holiday, 21 points as a starter. Overall, I don't know what to pull from this game other than the Harrison Barnes stuff that we've already talked about and that Domantas stepped up. Like, that's what I want to see out of him. Now, what I'm not happy that we haven't seen yet is we're still missing that game where Fox is in takeover mode and Sabonis is playing really well. Like, we've seen the 2 best games that Sabonis has had in Sacramento. One, this most recent one, Fox wasn't in the game. He was hurt. And the earlier one before that where Sabonis scored over 30 points, Fox had a really bad night. Like, the Kings need to find a way, and that's where the remainder of the season is useful, unless Fox is too hurt to play. The Kings need to find a way to get both of those guys eating at the same time. We've seen a couple of 20-point performances and a double-double for Sabonis, which, by the way, this was his 25th double-double of his season. We've seen games where they're in the low to mid-20s, but I'm talking about like how many times have we seen like Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in Brooklyn each score over 30? Or I'm not sure if Joel Embiid and James Harden have done it, but it can be expected. Let's go back a couple of years to Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. How many times have we seen them score 30 together? Or when Kevin Durant was in Golden State, Steph Curry and Kevin Durant both scoring 30 in a game. We've seen it a ton of times with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum with the Boston Celtics, mostly because that team kind of needs them to do that. But the Kings, if Fox and Sabonis are really going to be their big two and offense is going to be their strength, you need to get games where both of them are scoring 30-plus points. When one of them is unstoppable, the other one should also be eating. It shouldn't be, oh, Fox is on his, Sabonis get out of the way, or Sabonis is on his, Fox get out of the way. No. That don't work for me. I need Fox and Sabonis to both be on theirs, having those kind of nights together. And then it's on Barnes and the rest of the supporting cast, Mitchell, DiVincenzo. It's on them to support when one or both of those guys are out of the game. And it's up to them also to take advantage of the amount of attention that it's going to be on those two guys. Because I guarantee you, if Fox and Sabonis are playing well and eating at the same time, I don't know how the hell you guard the Sacramento Kings. I don't know how the hell you guard anybody at that point. That's really tough. It's also tough to see what's happening with Richaun Holmes, or what has happened with Richaun Holmes. This has just been a brutal, brutal season for my man. And I feel so bad for him because he celebrated finally getting paid this past offseason. And even then, his paycheck was not as big as he wanted. I was surprised. The Kings gambled with the big man market and they won. And they got Richaun Holmes on a deal that, even if he hasn't necessarily lived up to it this season, I think Richaun's deal is still very, very team friendly. And I think it is still a steal of a deal. Now, that being said, Richaun has dealt with incredible amounts of frustration with injuries. He had his position basically usurped by Domatas Sabonis with that trade, which, sorry, man, that's the NBA. Like, as good as Richaun Holmes is and was, and as much as I like him, like, there's a big difference between Richaun Holmes as your starting 5 and Domatas Sabonis as your starting 5. And if you can't see that, I don't know what you're watching. But in addition to all this that Richaun's been dealing with, and we've seen in the games that he has played recently, the frustration coming out on the floor, but we've also seen him miss a handful of games because of personal reasons. And from what I understand, that personal reason is that Richaun has dealt, or is having a hard time dealing with a death in the family. I can't even imagine. I mean, I've dealt with like the loss of my grandma in the last year, and that was hard enough on me. I don't have to play a game in front of millions of people where everybody's dissecting every move that I make, and there's a lot of pressure on me. I can't imagine how to deal with that, especially when it's someone that Richaun was as close to as it sounds like he was with this person. I have no idea. And different people cope with different things. Like, mentally, you can tell Richaun is not the same, and he hasn't been the same for a while. And physically, he's been dealing with getting his eye scratched and his face hit more often than any big or any NBA player should. Like, the amount of times that Richaun has been hit in the face this season has just been ridiculous. It's been a rough year for my man. And the reality is, I mean, regardless of what happens in the future, like, Richaun is a tremendously easy guy to root for. He's also a wonderful human being, a bundle of joy, someone who is fun to talk to, someone who is genuine, passionate, has worked his ass off to get where he is, deserves every bit of praise and every cent of his contract because of how hard he worked coming from Bowling Green, working his way as a journeyman until landing in the right space at the right time and becoming a starter here in Sacramento. Like, Richaun Holmes has busted his ass and deserves only the best. But Richaun Holmes is probably not going to be a Sacramento King anymore. I think we've seen Richaun's last game in a Kings uniform. And that writing was kind of written on the wall this offseason with the addition of Domatas Sabonis. Now, Richaun is still under contract, but I expect Richaun, in addition to Harrison Barnes, to probably be the most valuable trade pieces that the Kings have this offseason that will be shopped. I imagine both of those names are going to be brought up in rumors a ton over the summer months. And I do think that Richaun Holmes and maybe your first-round draft pick this year or a future draft pick could actually turn into a great win-now asset that the Kings might be looking for. I don't see how Richaun Holmes remains a Sacramento King next season. And if he does, the Kings better be confident that they can figure out how to get him and Sabonis to play well together. Because Richaun, to me, should not be a bench player on this team. As much as he could be effective in that role, Richaun could be effective in any role, I think. It's just the kind of player he is. He knows how to adapt. But it's in the best interest of the Sacramento Kings, and it might even be in the best interest of Richaun Holmes now that Sabonis is here, for both sides to move on and for the Kings to find value. And this is something that I have expected since we got to the day after the trade deadline, or we got to 12:01 p.m. on trade deadline day, and Richaun was still a King, which surprised a lot of people. I'm glad Monte McNair didn't make a knee-jerk trade at the time, even if now, for the remainder of the season, they're going to be without Richaun. But I expect him to be shipped out and used to acquire a valuable asset, because I don't believe there is a scenario where you move on from Richaun Holmes and you get nothing of value in return. If not, that would be, honestly, malpractice in my mind by Monte McNair, because Richaun does have value around this league. He absolutely has value around the league. Richaun said in a statement, "I would like to thank everyone for their support during these difficult times. I love this team. I love my teammates, and I look forward to returning next year." I wouldn't read too far into that next line or that last line. Again, he's under contract with the Sacramento Kings. So as of right now, he is a King going forward. There's no reason to speculate otherwise, even if he and his agent, I'm going to guess, I have not heard this, and I'm not saying Richaun is demanding a trade or asking out, but I imagine he and his agent wouldn't mind the idea of a change of scenery. And here's what Monte McNair said, Kings general manager Monte McNair said, "Richaun is a core member of our team who is very important to our success. We fully support Rich and look forward to seeing him back on the court for the 2022-2023 NBA season. No commitment to him still here in Sacramento, only support for their guy that's going through a hard time right now. No issue with anything that McNair said, no reason to dissect anything that he said in that statement." But life goes on. And now you look forward to a Sunday matinee performance against the best team in the Western Conference and your Pacific Division rivals. Not really, but they're in the same division, as if that means anything in the NBA. Phoenix Suns coming into town. We'll preview that very briefly. before we wrap up today's podcast and after I tell you about another couple of great sponsors, 2 back-to-back sponsors that are perfect to help you get in shape, lose weight, and eat healthy. I'm talking about Athletic Greens and Built Bar. Let me tell you about Athletic Greens first, because this is a new sponsor here of the Locked On Kings podcast. This is a product that I have started to use every single day, and there's one aspect that Athletic Greens has done for me and that I was most intrigued by, and I'm already seeing results. Now, it's not just handles one thing. It handles so much stuff. I started really taking Athletic Greens because it helps with my sleep and my recovery, because my sleep schedule is trash. I work at 3 a.m. every single day, and I'm up at 2. And sometimes I'm up late, staying up till 10, 11 o'clock, watching Kings games. And I also have a 6-month-old at home. Like, sleep sometimes does not happen for me. But when I do get that sleep and I need that recovery from my body, Athletic Greens provides that for me. Athletic Greens is lifestyle friendly, whether you're eating keto or you have a keto diet, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. It contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals, or artificial anything, while still tasting good. It supports better sleep quality. This is big for me. Recovery. It supports mental clarity and alertness. It's the one thing that is best out of all things. Athletic Greens uses the best of the best products based on the latest science, with constant product iterations and third-party testing. Plus, it's affordable. It costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your own health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. It's cheaper than getting all of the different supplements yourself and creating your own stuff at home. You're investing in an all-in-one nutritional insurance. It takes the overwhelming chaos of eating healthy and getting that nutrition, and trust me, it can be overwhelming. If you are not a professional nutritionist, most of us, we don't know what we're doing half the time. Athletic Greens solves that issue for you. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NBA Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NBA Network to take ownership of your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. And Locked On Kings is brought to you by Built Bars. Built Bars, protein bars that taste like candy bars. What more can I tell you about Built Bars? Well, I can tell you that if you're looking for something that is a healthy replacement for that sweet tooth that you have, nobody should be expected to just get rid of that sweet tooth outright. Anybody who says that starting a diet means throwing all that stuff out and just being okay with that, that's trash. Like, we need those sweets. We need those goodies. We look forward to those goodies any time of day. Built Bar replaces them with their incredible different flavors. Like I said, covered in 100% chocolate, soft, easy to chew. Like if you're getting a mint brownie bar, which is my favorite, tastes like mint chocolate chip ice cream. If you're a fruit lover, I also love like their raspberry bar and their orange bars. They're delicious. They're incredible. They're good for you. They help you recover after workouts. They help you just get through a long day if you need a snack. If you're a golfer like me, it's a perfect kind of snack after 9 holes to get you ready for the back 9. And what's great is there are 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. So go to Built.com right now. You can order a bunch of different types of boxes. You can get a mixed box if you want to just get a bunch of flavors sent to you so you can try them. You can build your own custom boxes. There's so many different flavors that they keep coming out with, different products that they have. Built bars are perfect for you. Give them a try. And when you get something on Built.com, use our promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off. Again, that's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Suns in town, Sunday matinee, and I think I can tell you how this game is going to go, but I want to see a Kings effort similar to the Bucks and Bulls games and not so much the Celtics game. Of course, a lot of that relies on whether or not De'Aaron Fox is going to play. My wish list items are simple, and we've talked about them a lot today. If Fox plays, I want to see Fox and Sabonis play well together and have big games together at the same time. If not, I want to see similar effort out of Sabonis. I'm not necessarily expecting a 30-point, 20-rebound performance out of him, but I want to see him still be that guy who can take over a game without Fox on the floor. That's what I expect out of him. And then my eyes are going to be firmly on Harrison Barnes. I need more from HB. And if I had a wish list item, it's something I've talked about a lot in recent weeks here on Locked On Kings. Get Dante DiVincenzo back in the starting lineup. I'm glad Davion Mitchell started in place of De'Aaron Fox, but it should have been Mitchell and DiVincenzo starting together. I don't know why Justin Holiday continues to start. I don't think Alvin Gentry's going to change that. I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense to me, but I would like to see that as well. But regardless of who plays and what the rotations are, I don't have too high of expectations for this game, but that may surprise you, or rather make you happy or excite you if you are one of those draft lottery standings lovers. And speaking of draft lottery standings, giving you a quick update, the Kings are now just half a game back of the Indiana Pacers for the best odds of the 5th overall pick. Right, just so you know, that gives you a 42.1% odd to move up into the top 4 and a 10.5% chance at number 1 overall. Right now, the Kings are in the 6th spot with a 37.2% chance to move up into the top 4 and a 9% chance at the number 1 overall pick. The Kings are also 4 games back of the Oklahoma City Thunder in the 4th spot. I think it's pretty safe to say, unless the Kings lose out, that spot's not going to be touched. Now OKC is sneaking up on Detroit, who's just a game ahead of them in that 3rd spot. I don't think the Kings are getting as high as 4, but 5 is definitely within reach, and a loss to the Phoenix Suns probably helps with that on Sunday. But regardless of what the result is, of course, we'll discuss it here on Locked On Kings. Have more great episodes coming for you next week and beyond. Very excited to finish out this season here on the Locked On Kings podcast, and I hope you will continue to tune in and enjoy the wins, losses, moments, something. We'll find something to be happy about. Maybe. I don't know. We'll do our best. I appreciate you listening. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode. Until then, my name is Matt George. You have been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.